everyone. You all are welcomed here on the platform of EU webinar. So today we are having Vijay Kumar Shiv Pujay sir. Uh, gladly I am welcoming Vijay Kumar Shiv Pujay sir on this platform. Sir is Director of Atlex Business Solutions. It is a knowledge process outsourcing firm practicing in the patents and designs. He is IPR lead, IPFC HOCAM New Delhi. He is serving as a mentor of Chance Government of India Niti Aayog Adult Teen Labs. He is mentor for the Startup India, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. He is also co-founder of Pharma and online education initiative, which is working actively in area of pharmaceutical education and have collaborated with the various industries and education hubs. He is registered patent agent in Indian Patent Office. Sir is MPharm with the LLB degree, and he is having more than 16 years of experience in a pharma corporates, law firms, and consultancy. Sir has conducted more than 100 awareness programs on the various platforms at various universities, colleges, associations, chambers, incubation centers. So today we are glad to have Vijay Kumar Pujay with us to share his knowledge on the topic of the patents of pharmaceuticals and herbals. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Komal, and hopefully I'm clearly audible, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Komal, for the warm welcome and the introduction, as well as thank you so much, Parul University, the Pharmacy Institute, for inviting me for this particular session under webinar series, which is on patenting of pharmaceutical and herbal products as such. It's actually for me a privilege to be on this particular platform because this is, I think, the third occasion when I'm speaking on the platform of Parul University. I had this opportunity to visit this beautiful campus couple of years back when I had visited Vadodara, and a few months back the university had also provided me this opportunity to be as a panelist in one of their conference with respect to intellectual property rights as such. So I'm really thankful and feel privileged to be here, and so I would let me just share my screen to take you through the actual session that I'm actually going to discuss. Okay, hopefully this one is clearly visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So as it was mentioned in the initial introduction, as such, being working with various chambers, various government of India initiative, but basically, I'm a pharmacist. Did my MPharm almost I would say 17 years back in 2004, and that point of time we of course had a lot of opportunities with respect to the jobs as such, but then there was one thing that made me to enter into this domain of intellectual property rights. To be honest, I never wanted to work in a lab. I wanted to have a job which was a desk job or which didn't involve any experimental. Reason being, I would say it was more about my skill set, in terms of the practical skill set, basically, and that's how I started my journey. And then I worked with organizations like Rabaxi, Wockhardt, and Glenmark for long for intellectual property rights. And what I learned throughout those years, I've been implementing in last 4 years, I would say, when I started my own venture as such. And currently we've been working with lots of corporates, law firms, MSMEs, startups, chambers, few universities, as well as academic institutions, pharmacy colleges as such. We also work under the brand of Pharma Literati for various activities which are with respect to pharmacy colleges as such. What we have seen in last few years actually with the introduction of the rankings, ARIA rankings, NIRF rankings, or with respect to the accreditation agencies like NAC and NBA, there has been kind of a push for innovation related activities at academic institution level as such. But then beyond that, one of the major requirements when we think of innovation at academic institutions, be it pharma or non-pharma for that sake, then one of the major requirements has been with respect to patents as such. And if you look at the new education policy as well, therein also the focus has been moving towards innovation, entrepreneurship, startup as such. And these are the things which an institute is supposed to do beyond regular teaching as such. And the names like Parul University, wherein we have lots of facilities available for research. I think what is also important for the institutions or universities is to think beyond publications, research publications, trying to get more number of patents as well. And not only patenting the research, but also ensuring that that research is also getting commercialized. And we have been involved into all these activities with most of the institutions. And that's where I thought having a session like this would definitely going to help everyone as such. So I'm going to speak on patenting of pharmaceutical and herbal products. When we speak about pharmaceutical industry, herbal industry, cosmetic industry, or nutraceuticals industry, that point of time, one thing is common in all these sectors. Basically the life sciences sector, they are dependent on innovation. They are dependent on research and development. When I joined in first year in my B Farm, that point of time, I remember my seniors telling me, you have more number of opportunities in so-called R&D, research and development. But then those sectors which are research based, therein we have a concept called patenting, which is kind of some permission granted by government. When I say government, right here in India is Government of India. Patent office, IP office basically gives you some kind of permission. And when I say permission, it's a kind of a license basically. So it's like, for example, I own this particular invention, or I own this particular idea, or I own this particular product basically, which has happened for the first time. When we innovate, when we do research, that point of time, what is expected is the product which is, let's say, novel per se, right? And when we have all these things happening in the what you say academic institution level, or in an lab as such, when we have these products developed, that point of time, if they are new and if they have some commercial potential, at that point of time, we can also get a license, which is called as a patent basically. Now, patent, when I read or hear the word patent, the first or the most, I would say, relatable term as a patent, I think everyone can relate to, is the movie Three Idiots, wherein we had this character, Funsuk Wangdu, and this particular character had lots of patents, 400 plus patents in his name. And then there was this character Chatur Ramlingam. What happens in that case is Chatur Ramlingam comes down hunting actually where is Funsuk Wangdu. He wants some signature. Basically, what happens is Funsuk Wangdu has got some patents, and the other character Chatur Ramlingam need a license for it. Now, why does he need license? Basically, patent as a right is a monopoly right. So for example, if I have a patent in my name for a research, for an invention, that means only I can use it, or with my permission only someone can use it. It's something which is very important to know here, that for pharmaceutical products, if you are getting patent doesn't mean you can commercialize that product. Reason being, those products need to undergo clinical trials independently. Okay, so the FDA approval has nothing to do with patenting. FDA approval is mandatory thing for a product to get commercialized, but patent is something which is optional. It is not necessary, not mandatory per se to get a patent for your product. Then why should we go for it? So for example, if I have an invention and I feel that product is really good and I would get good business out of it, actually there is a business case or business sense in that particular product. In that case, when I launch this product, there would be other players, my competitors, who would also be eyeing for this particular product. They would also like to launch the same product. That is negated, or that is something which is excluded because of patent. If I have a patent, no one else except me or my permission or my license can launch this particular product or use that particular invention. So basically what patents do is they create monopolies, and monopolies are never good for the market or economy or consumers basically. So if it's a natural tendency that if there is a monopoly, the prices are really high. That has been always a matter of concern for pharmaceutical patents specifically. But then if we look at it in a very different perspective, the cost for discovering a new drug is really very high. And if that cost is really very high, it is also important that that cost need to be recovered somehow. Otherwise, everyone will stop innovating, and that's the reason. And another thing, like what you are doing in your lab doesn't have any value until and unless it is for the benefit of the society. Patents ensure that what you have invested into as a product, that money you can get recovered through monopoly for 20 years. But after 20 years, the invention is in public domain as such. Anyone can use that. So for example, there is a great invention in your lab that you have done, but it's not in public domain. Then the value for it is zero actually. Also, what happens is the knowledge gets killed right there within those boundaries of walls basically. And to ensure that that invention, that research is in public domain, so in exchange for the public disclosure, you are getting monopoly for 20 years time answer. Now, when we think of patent, there are of course there are three golden criteria for patentability. Also, just one thing I would like to highlight here is getting a patent is something which is jurisdictional. That means if I am filing a patent in India, my rights, because these are legal rights, are only restricted to India. If I want those rights in some other country, then in that case, I need to file a separate patent in that country for the same invention. And that is pretty much possible. So the patentability criteria, when we speak of, there are three golden criteria for patentability. Novelty, everyone knows it. It's new, something new happening for the first time. When I say novelty, it's not local novelty. कोई चीज बड़ौदा में first time हो रही है, that is novelty with respect to that location. कोई चीज गुजरात में first time हो रही है, it's for the state. But when we speak of patentability as a novelty, that point of time, what we call it as an absolute novelty. Globally, this invention has never been disclosed or practiced. Then only you would be in a position. So the novelty is absolute, globally check hota hai, but then the rights that you get are local as such, only India centric. Now, another criteria, second criteria for patentability is inventive step, which is also called as non-obviousness. In layman term, we also can also call it as predictability of the art. That is there. So if the invention is predictable, in that case you cannot get a patent. If the invention is unpredictable, now what does it mean by predictable and unpredictable? Let me tell you one example. So there are, let's say, uh, uh, two drugs, and so there is one drug which is a roflumilast, and the other drug is apremilast. Now roflumilast is available for certain treatment of a particular indication in a certain dosage form. Now, apremilast, therapeutic category is same, chemical category is same. There is slight structural difference. Now, apremilast is a second generation molecule. Now, what happens? Apremilast for that indication or that dosage form may be new, because apremilast is a new drug. It was never tried, let's say, for rheumatoid arthritis. Roflumilast was tried for rheumatoid arthritis. Now, if apremilast is tried for rheumatoid arthritis, in I mean, there may be novelty in that, but if roflumilast can work against rheumatoid arthritis, there is a high probability, or high, it is predictable that the drug which is from the same therapeutic category, PDE4 inhibitor with structural similarity, there is a high probability or predictability that apremilast can be used in a particular dosage form for rheumatoid arthritis treatment. So novelty and non-obviousness are two separate things basically. Most of the patent applications get rejected based on non-obviousness. Uska reason ye hai, what happens when we are working on a project, be it a UG project, PG project, or a research, or PhD research for that sake, we are doing literature survey, and during that literature survey we are ensuring that the invention is novel, naya hai. But then the secondary criteria is never, actually we never know, and we never try to come up with some I would say reasoning for unpredictability basically. That's where most of the patents, pharmaceutical patents, non-pharma patent, get rejected based on the so-called inventive step or non-obviousness as such. Third criteria is industrial applicability, which is more of, I would say, the product has either for the industry or by the industry. In that case, we can actually go for patenting. Now, I have certain questions. I have listed out some questions basically which have been asked to me again and again, and I have included those questions, and we'll try to answer those questions just to remove all the doubts about the patenting process, or so one of the questions is, as a researcher or as a student or as a faculty, when should I file the patent application first? Now, when I say when should I file, is it before the hypothesis that I start with basically, or is it after all the studies are done basically? So therein, what is important to understand is, it is always both the things are allowed actually. You can file a provisional application just based on a mere idea without doing any experimentation, but within 1 year you need to complete the experimentation and file that complete application answer. But again, how we actually try to answer this question is, you should file a patent application as and when you feel like it has some business value for it, and there may be something which would be helping you. So at the initial stage when you are having the hypothesis, that stage as well, you can actually file the patent application. Now, why should I file patent application? Now, this is one very critical question I ask to all my clients. when they come up for patent filing, basically. Now, see, when you're working with a corporate, when you're working with a company, that point of time, it is always preferred to protect your invention. Okay, but then as an academician, it is also important, and most of the times what answers I get is, sir, we want it for our CV, basically. We want it for our ranking purpose or accreditations, basically. Now, so because there is always a cost involved in patent filing to grant, if that cost makes sense based on the reasoning that you have, then only go for patent filing. Otherwise, so if it is not so the cost versus benefit ratio, if you see, in that case, it is important that, if it doesn't make sense, don't go for it. Actually, why I always ask, actually, why should I file a patent application to the client as well? But yes, of course, it helps branding as well. A lot of times, basically, I had one case actually wherein one of my clients, the student actually, got some funding based on because that particular person had got a patent filed as such for this invention as such, and that's the reason she got some funding, and I'm so sorry, I think I missed okay. Yeah, sorry. So, to file a patent application, the reason is something which is, of course, the patent office is not going to ask you, your agent or attorney is also not going to ask you per se. Now, what data do I need to file a patent application? Now, this is another crucial question, actually, when we speak of patent filing. Now, it is important that the data, it's not like a thesis wherein you have put all the data actually in a patent application. The data that is required for patent filing would be dependent on what you are claiming, what you are patenting, basically. Okay? Now, shall I take the help of a patent agent for filing? You should, in case if you really want to go from filing till grant, actually. So many a times, so the research paper we draft, actually we write a research paper. Patent drafting is something similar, but you need a lot of practice, and only thing that is different from research paper mostly is the claiming part. That's where your entire invention is dependent on. So to be honest, of course, for me, there is a conflict of interest because I'm also an agent. I would always tell you to file, get a help of a patent agent. But if you feel like you can draft it correctly and you can prosecute it as well, then you can do on your own. Patent office never asks for a patent agent filing the patent, basically. So can I publish my research before or after patent filing? So the answer to this is you cannot publish it. You shouldn't publish it, rather your research before patent filing. But जैसे आज मैंने फाइल कर दिया तो कल मैं publish कर सकता हूँ. That is allowed, actually. Okay. Now, can I commercialize my invention after patent filing? Absolutely, it is possible, and it is essential to know that commercialization, as I said, has nothing to do with patent filing as such. Pharmaceutical commercialization has to do more with FDA and not with patent filing. How much is the cost for patent filing? So official cost is available on the patent office website, and those who are really genuinely interested can ping me separately, because I think this is not the forum where, but then on an average, I would say the filing to grant, the entire costing shouldn't be more than, let's say, 50 or 60,000, actually, that's a very conservative number, basically, that I'm telling you. Can I file my patent application without telling my college or even guide? And yes, I'll tell you, this has happened with many of my clients, actually. One student called me and she said, sir, I want to file a patent, but then I don't want to include my guide's name in it. And that was a bit surprising for me. But then, can students do this? Yes, they can do this, and they are doing this, rather. What is important here to understand, the institute, the university should have certain IPR policy in place. so that the research that is happening at the institution is restricted, or there is a permission that is that, and this need to be circulated, or everyone should be aware of this. Can someone else file patent application for my invention? मैंने कुछ किया है, कोई और उसका इन्वेंशन का पेटेंट फाइल कर सकता है? Yes, this has also happened with one of my clients actually, but then unfortunately, there are legal ways to block it, but then there is always a cost involved. So just to avoid that, it's always better that you file your patent application first. Now, a difference between a patent application and a granted patent is twofold. Patent application and research paper is twofold. A patent application gets published 2 times. One as an application, one as a granted number. Now, any application that you file, complete application, definitely gets published, and so that's the first publication. If it gets granted, thereafter also it gets published. How much time does it take to get the patent granted? Anywhere between 4 to 5 years. So actually, we recently had a case wherein we had a application 2017 ka filing tha, which got granted a few days back, and that's of course from Ahmedabad only, Gujarat ka hi hamare kisi client ka patent grant hua hai. Now, is publication of an application, does it assure grant of a patent? No, not at all. Publication of an application is a normal process. It doesn't assure a grant of a patent. Grant of a patent depends on those criteria: novelty, non-obviousness, industrial applicability, and some other which we are going to see. Cost after filing till grant, I think I have already covered this. Can I commercialize the invention after grant? Absolutely, there is no connection. Now, one of the major misconception about intellectual property rights is I have got a patent now and someone would come give me a lot of money and take my patent. Remember, it's not the patent which would fetch you money. It would be the product which need to be marketed, and that product is protected by patent. So that product, if it has market value, then only you would get money. Or then only someone like Chatur Ramlingam would come to you and you would be Funsupang whose patent gets licensed, basically. Now, there is another type of IP which is design. I think we shouldn't discuss much here. Okay, now, many of us, the master students or even UG students, know about research paper. We have done many of these, and now, when we speak of research paper and patent application per se, the differences I have pointed out just to let you know how does it actually work practically. A publication, in case of research paper, is after analysis. But in case of patent application, there is no evaluation. Whatever you file gets published. Let me repeat, whatever you file gets published. It is not necessary that once it is published, it gets granted. There is no fees actually for research paper patent ke case mein. There is always a cost involved. The timelines in case of research paper publication are variable. In case of patent, we have normal 18 months and early publication 1 week to 1 month that is available. The publication of research paper depends mostly on the novelty part. And in case of patent application, it is novelty as well as non-obviousness. Now, in case of research paper, you have right as an author only. You can use it only as an author. There is no legal right involved. But in case of patent, you have a legal right over that invention. You can own that invention. No one else without your permission. That's what we call commercialization. Aapka research paper aapne kuch publish kiya, so anyone can commercialize that product. But if it is a patent, only you or your licensee can do that. The rights, as I said, jurisdictional rights hote hain. A research paper, when we communicate that point of time, the results are seen. Results are the most important thing for a research paper getting published. But in case of patent, the most significant part to get the patent granted is something called as a claims, which defines the legal boundary basically. And as I think most of the faculties would agree with this, it's you need a lot of practice actually to draft a research paper. Similar thing, you need a practice to actually draft a patent application. So this is all patent related activities as such, or the basics of patent. But then in India, we don't have certain inventions which are patentable basically. So the ones in red are the ones which are related to pharma directly. Section 3D, Section 3E, Section 3I, and Section 3P. Section 3D, new form of known substance. I'll discuss this. 3E for combinations, 3I for method of treatment, second medical uses, and 3P for traditional knowledge. Herein, you don't get a patent here in India. But then there is a way to overcome this as well. That also we are going to discuss. Now, most of the patents, as I said, get rejected because of obviousness, in few cases novelty, incorrect claiming basically those the patent applications which have been drafted by the individuals or the scientists on their own drafting those patents basically, like, you know. Now coming back to the section 3, there are lots of things like in case of section 3D, a new form of a known substance. So for example, this is one specific section which is India centric, and we don't have something similar anywhere in the world basically. So a polymorph, a derivative, a new salt may not be patentable unless and until it gives you therapeutic efficacy enhancement. Now, in case of section 3E, combination, so like two drugs combined with each other, they cannot be patented unless and until there is a synergy, synergistic effect. जब तक नहीं है तब तक उसको पेटेंट नहीं मिल सकता. What we do typical in pharmacology, drug repurposing, second medical use, method of treatment not patentable at least in India, but yes, US may it is patentable. Traditional knowledge not patentable in India, but there is a way out to deal with this. Traditional knowledge, old herb, let's say, if you are putting it into modern dosage form and preparing a new product, then in that case, it may be patentable as well. So to get these patents rejected, as I said, non-patentable subject matter is also one of the criteria. These sections, especially for pharma, 3D, 3E, 3I, and 3P are the sections where patents reject. Now, this is all about patenting, the system within India, how it works and all. Now let's go to those actual departments, or I would say those actual things that we do in labs, and how is it actually relevant with respect to
Sir, you are not audible. You are not audible. You removed your headphone, then after you are not audible.
in
Yes,
am I
sir.
not
Yes, sir.
okay, sorry. Yeah. So in pharmacology, most of the inventions that are related to dose determination, dosage form determination, dosing regimen determination, method of administration, metabolite, and method of treatment, all these inventions can be patentable as such, but not necessarily in India. So what we do in clinical studies, basically, those things may be patentable in few cases, in few countries rather, US may, Europe may, but not India may. Like, you know, so few of these are even patentable in India based on how you actually draft or how are the basically the claims as such. Then let me go to the another major department, which is pharmaceutics as such. And in pharmaceutics and pharmaceutical chemistry, basically, everything that you do is patentable, be it a dosage form, be it a combination, be it a drug excipient ratio, be it a new dosage form, be it a NDDS, novel drug delivery system basically, or let's say you change a dosing regimen in few cases, or you change a excipient basically, or excipient concentration basically, or the strengths you are changing basically for your products as such. In those cases, all these inventions are patentable provided the invention is novel, the invention is unpredictable, that is non-obvious, and the invention has industrial applicability in it. So Sutix Lab, anything, even something related to packaging, pharmaceutical packaging, but like therein also it may be patentable based on what kind of invention you actually have got. But basically all those dosage forms, tablet, capsule, so like from oral route of administration, or maybe something like a transdermal patch, something like semi-solid dosage forms like cream, ointment, lotion, gel, anything that you do in Sutix lab as a new product basically, or during your thesis basically, that can be for sure patentable as such. So that's about the Sutix lab as such. In chemistry lab, process for preparing API, the end product, new drug, not necessarily that new drug discovery only gives you a patent basically, but in case of chemistry lab basically, old drug ka new process, that's what we call process patent. Okay, that can also be patentable as such in terms of chemistry lab. Of course, what we discussed that under section 3D, polymorphs and all these salts, derivatives, esters are not patentable, but they are patentable if there is an enhancement in therapeutic efficacy as such. Intermediates as a product are definitely patentable. So if you're coming up with an intermediate which is very crucial to form one particular API, so that means your invention can still be patentable. When I'm saying this is patentable, that means it has to actually satisfy all the criteria of patentability as well. And those criteria are novelty, non-obviousness, industrial applicability, and those under section 3, it should not fall within the ambit of section 3 basically. That's in pharmaceutical chemistry answer. Now so this is all about pharma inventions, all drug discovered, all inventions with respect to the dosage form, API processes, everything is patentable. But then when we speak of pharmacognosy per se, there are a lot of misconceptions basically, all because of two things. One, the section 3P, that traditional knowledge is not patentable. Haldi like is a prime example, but let me tell you something. Traditional knowledge, haldi as a product cannot be patentable, but if you prepare a solid dispersion of haldi to improve its solubility, yes, it is patentable. So it is not a traditional knowledge that haldi can be formulated into a solid dispersion basically, right? That's what the difference is in between a traditional knowledge actually, like and the actual inventions that can be actually patentable as well. So this is one thing that is very, very crucial to understand. Get a herb, prepare it in a modern dosage form. I'm speaking about herbal patenting. Include it in or prepare a modern dosage form out of it, and probably it is patentable in that case. Another one of the criterias, because in cases of herbs, it's always in many cases it's a combination or admixture basically, therein again it may not be patentable because of this. But if you show the synergistic effect, yes, it is patentable. Herbal products का patent combination का मिल सकता है. The third thing, second medical use, method of treatment, absolutely not applicable in India. हमें नहीं मिल सकता इसका drug repurposing के बाद patent in India. But the most important thing to understand here is if that second medical use is really important or has some business value, you can get a patent in other jurisdictions. जैसे यूएस में या यूरोप में आपको उसका पेटेंट मिल सकता है. So in case of herbal products, it is very, or pharmacognosy, it is very essential to understand that the inventions, the herbal research, although like we and see, for herbs, it is not necessary that all the knowledge related to herbs is a traditional knowledge. That is also very important. We have TKDL, traditional knowledge digital library, in that if it is mentioned. So for example, what I do is, if I take a old herb, prepare a gel product for that, or let's say I prepare a like something like a herbal toothpaste, like for those ingredients which have never been tried as a toothpaste. In that case, it may be patentable as well. Now herbal, there is no blanket ban on herbal patents as such. This is very crucial to understand, and I have some examples right here in India. So we have this one example, IN 295175, herbal composition for the treatment of epilepsy. Said composition comprises Lasias spinosa, Costus specius, Curcuma longa, again here haldi, and Stribulus asper. Now this thing, if you look at this, it is a herbal composition. It has taken care of section 3P. It is a combination, taken care of section 3E. It is not per se the method of treatment, but it also includes composition for the treatment of epilepsy. That means it has also taken care of section 3I. Let me again go to those three ones, like section 3E, 3I, and 3P. तीनों को all the three things have been taken care in this particular claim. Now another patent that we have, again if you see, in this case what has been done is, there is a drug, herbal medicament for nerve disorders. It contains Caparis siparia, is a herb, and excipient. Now that excipient may be a pharmaceutical excipient per se. So this is basically a dosage form for the treatment of nerve disorders, wherein the medicament comprises 90 to 95% of Caparis siparia. Now this is important to understand that herbal inventions are patentable in India. Herbal products can be patented. Another simple, now what they have done, it's a simple product basically, like for blood sugar control without risk of hypoglycemia. It comprises certain actives basically, which are isolated, like terpineol, linalool, geraniol, citronellol, santalol, and methyl salicylate, and other these are terpenoids and fat oil. Now all these may be known for controlling blood sugar. There is a high possibility, but then what they have mentioned, a herbal oil composition, that's what makes it patentable as such, and this is very crucial and important as such. So these are few of the things which makes inventions in the pharmaceutical domain and as well herbal domain patentable as such. So basically, if you have any invention, a research project, MPharm thesis, PhD thesis, which is into any of these domains, if the invention is new, invention is non-obvious, in that case, it would definitely be patentable. You can get a patent out of it, actually. I'm done with my presentation. If there are any questions, actually, I would be more than happy to answer. But before actually concluding, let me also take you through our activities which we do with pharma, institutions or universities as such. Of course, we have been involved into patent filing and prosecution as such. We filed more than 130 patents. 9 out of them have already been granted. We have been involved with lots of institutions with different courses, short-term courses. We have currently have a course which is going on for innovation, startup, and entrepreneurship as well with one of the institutions in Delhi. We also have internship options for the students, BPharm and Pharm students as such. Lots of workshops and trainings we have been conducting as such, and we are also being involved into like a startup mentoring for the student as such, wherein there is any actually idea as such involved, wherein the student needs some kind of guidance, like with respect to the commercialization of the invention, or I would say startup related activities if they actually want it. So as I said, I'm done with my presentation. I would like to take some time for the questions as such, like if there are any as such, try to like have it as a like in a very specific the time that was provided. I tried to cover maximum things actually with respect to each of the departments. Of course, it's a very wide topic. There are lots of things which can be spoken, but then I thought at a student level or as a faculty level, maybe at the masters or researcher, for them these are few of the things which are actually really very crucial as such, as far as the patenting of the pharmaceutical and herbal products is concerned. I would also like to conclude with like something related to careers in IP basically, especially for the students, even for the faculty members, because like I see a lot of faculty members or researchers are being patent agents as well. They are being patent agents. They have been drafting patents for others, as well as there have been a lot, many of the students have started their own ventures, or they are working with many organizations, the pharma corporates as such, be it a smaller organization or like the bigger ones as such. So that's what I have. Thank you so much, Parul University, the Institute of Pharmacy, the management, Dr. Komal, for inviting me. And just before I conclude, actually, I think my colleague Priyanka Joshi has joined. She's actually based in Ahmedabad. She's also someone who is actually involved with lots of pharmaceutical institutions for patent drafting and prosecution as such. So we have kind of a setup base in Ahmedabad, wherein we are working with few institutions within Gujarat as well for patent filing or prosecution as such. And in fact, Priyanka helped me to kind of prepare this particular presentation as well, strategize it as well. And for any queries as such, even or if anything is required at the institution level, she can at any point of time come down or visit to the institute as well. She has been doing it for us actually, and we would be more than happy to help you if anything with respect to your research is there. And I think it's now open forum for questions.
Sir, we have included few participants here, those who can unmute themselves and can ask you question directly. So I request participants, if you have any doubt, you can unmute yourself and you can ask. And then after, we have few questions here from our student side. So I'll ask that on behalf of them. So I request participants, those who are here, if they have any questions, they may ask. Okay, sir. We have few questions, few from our faculty side and few from our student side. So on behalf of them, I would like to ask you that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. We have seen that under section 3, that herbal things, means herbal traditional knowledge cannot be patentable unless if we have a new combinations, right? And we are proving that they are quite better. But do we require a clinical data to prove that, or the animal study, or some assays in vivo and in vitro assays that we require to perform to show their efficacy is better than existing one?
So yes, in vitro data and assay would be more than sufficient. It is not necessary that you should conduct clinical trials as such, because otherwise it would be a really highly costly affair as such. But then, yes, patent office never asks for specific clinical data, or I would say whether this really works in humans or not. That would never. So what hypothesis you have, if you are showing it in vitro, there is some data to just prove it, then that works well.
And sir, for the herbal related aspects, can we file a patent for new method for the extraction?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we have done it with one of our clients. They have come up with a new method of extraction. But when you say new method of extraction, you need to ensure that it is not predictable per se. I mean, it's just not like, किसी ने ABCD किया है, you are doing ABDC. That is arrangement or rearrangement that may not be patentable. But yes, if it's a complete
kind of newer technique of extraction of
absolutely
desired
yes.
phyto. And do we require to provide a data related to structural and all those things like NMR and all those things?
So not necessarily actually see, that's what I said. The data that we need to include depends on what we are claiming, what the invention is. It is never dependent on what data you have carried out. So in few cases, you may not need all the data that you mentioned. NMR and all may not be required. Extraction method, whether that extraction is giving you an output or not, and how is it different from the earlier methods. And have you actually practiced it or not, basically? What are those variables? So for example, let's say there is a variable of temperature, or there is a variable of a particular solvent, itna concentration mein hi use karna hai, ya itna pressure hona chahiye. So those things would be required, I think, for the this thing, what I would call it as a process, extraction process answer. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Another question from the pharmacology department, sir. What kind of research in that particular field can have good patentability?
I think now, see, I'll tell you, if you really want to, so patentability point of view, I would say anything, those criteria, if it is satisfying, like novelty, non-obviousness, that may be patentable. But if you ask me commercialization point of view, now, I would suggest definitely two things for sure. One, हम लोग pharmacist का थोड़ा सा एक वो we rarely go out of our field, basically. I think you should work on nutraceuticals. That has got great potential, especially up during this time, pandemic time. If you see, there is a great potential, and moving ahead as well, it actually would be definitely having. And also, I would say maybe work on some cosmetic related products. That is also something which would have great value wise. Okay, now patent point of view, if you ask specifically patent point of view, so as I said, any invention which you feel like, in any of the areas, if it is typically satisfying those criteria, so in many cases we have got patents jinka market value zero hai, mujhe pata hai, no one is going to buy that, but patent grant ho chuka. So these are two separate things. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. These are the questions from our faculty members and our students, those who have attended this webinar live in class from their side. And sir, with this, I would like to conclude here, and I would like to thank you for your time, your knowledge sharing things, and we are very grateful to have you again on this interaction platform, on webinar platform with us. So thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, sir.